If you own a home in State College in the $350,000 to $600,000 range, this is the pricing conversation most sellers never get. And it's the one that determines whether you walk away with top dollar or leave $20,000 or maybe even $40,000 on the table. Pricing isn't about guessing, my friend. It's not about what your neighbor listed for, and it's definitely not about trying high and seeing what happens. Today, I'm going to walk you through the math of overpricing, the math behind underpricing, and the exact framework that I use to price homes strategically right here in Center County so that you can make a confident decision, not an emotional one. Let's ground this in what's happening locally. In the State College Area School District, homes between $350,000 and $500,000 are still the most competitive segment. Months of inventory is going to fluctuate between 1.5 and 2.5 months depending on the micro location. Days on market spike dramatically once you price 3 to 5% above the competitive band. Here's what most sellers don't realize. The market is not one big pool. It's price band specific. A $425,000 home competes against a very different buyer pool than a $475,000 home. And when you price incorrectly, you don't just miss a little, you change the buyer audience entirely. That's where money gets lost. Before I move into the pricing framework that I actually use for clients right here in State College, let me say something important. If you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, this is more nuanced than I thought, good, because pricing isn't about optimism, my friend. It's about leverage. And here's the reality. Most sellers don't lose money because the market is bad. They lose money because they mispositioned in the first 2 weeks. If you're planning to sell in the next 6 to 12 months, this is exactly the stage where you should be thinking this through, not 2 days before you list. And if this kind of breakdown is helpful, subscribe. I put out one long-form video every week focused specifically on Center County strategy, not national headlines, not fluff, just real numbers and decision frameworks. All right, let's walk through the 3-layer pricing model and how it protects you from both overpricing and underpricing mistakes. Let's get into the strategic framework. Part 1, the overpricing myth. I'm going to use a clean example. Let's say market supported value is $450,000. You decide to list at $479,900 to leave room. Here's what typically happens in Center County. Showings slow down by 40 to 60%. Online saves drop. You attract curious buyers, but not serious ones. After 21 days, you reduce. Now you're chasing the market. When you reduced to $459,900, buyers see price reduced. Their psychology, it shifts. Instead of this is new and competitive, they think, what's wrong with it? Now, instead of competing against fresh listings, you're competing against newer listings plus your own stigma. Let's say you finally accept an offer at $438,000. That's $12,000 below true market value, and it took longer. And you carried that property for an extra 30 days. That's the cost of trying high. Part 2, the underpricing fear. Now let's flip it. True value is $450,000. Strategic list price, $449,900. If we position it correctly, you maximize exposure in the strongest buyer band, you increase showing velocity, and you ultimately create perceived value. In the right segments here locally, this often leads to multiple offers, stronger inspection positioning, and cleaner overall appraisal outcomes. So let's say this type of pricing ends up getting you 2 offers. One of them is at $452,000 and the other is at $460,000 with appraisal gap coverage. Now, you've created leverage. Underpricing doesn't mean giving it away. It means pricing at the center of gravity for buyer activity. And there's a big difference there. Part 3, the 3-layer pricing model. This is how I price homes right here in State College. Layer 1 is all about data support. This is where we're going to look at closed comps from the last 30 to 120 days. We're also going to look at active competition and absorption rate within that specific price band. Layer 2 is all about positioning strategy. Are we the nicest home in the neighborhood? Are we the best value? Or are we maybe competing against other properties for convenience and location? Layer 3 is risk tolerance, and this is where some agents will skip. Questions I ask are, do you need to sell within 30 days? Are you buying contingent? How sensitive are you to appraisal risk? How sensitive are you to inspection concessions? Because pricing, at the end of the day, is all about risk management. All right, let's really drive home this point with a little more local modeling. No, I'm not getting on the runway. No one wants to see that. Let's model two sellers in the $500,000 price band. Seller A lists at $525,000, 5% above supported value. Property sits for 45 days, 2 price reductions, sells at $492,000. Seller B lists at $499,900. They get 3 offers, closes at $512,000 with minimal concessions. Same market, different strategy, $20,000 plus difference. That's not luck, my friend. That's positioning. Here's the fact. End of the day, there's 2 things that sell properties: price and marketing. And you can argue that they're actually one and the same. It's all marketing. But the difference is that I, as the real estate professional, am going to nail the marketing. That's what I do. Price, though, is on you, the seller. You're the one who makes that decision. I can help you and give you guidance, but we need to work together. And that's the importance of having a great real estate professional by your side. All right, I'm going to start to bring this home and talk about the biggest pricing mistakes that I see in Center County. Pricing based on refinance appraisals from 2021 or 2022. Pricing off of that one aspirational active listing. That's the guy in your neighborhood who priced too high. Refusing to adjust after week 2 if showing velocity is low. Or ignoring micro location differences, the difference between the borough and the edges of the State College area school district. The market is going to tell us quickly if we're right, but only if we're watching the correct metrics. That's showings per week, save rates online, agent feedback patterns, and buyer price band overlap. Pricing isn't emotional, my friend. Ultimately, it's iterative and strategic. You have to leave the emotion out of it and stick to the logic. Wrapping up, if you're considering selling in the next 6 to 12 months, pricing is the single biggest lever that you control. What you can't control are interest rates, inventory, and buyer psychology. But you can control positioning, and positioning determines leverage. If you want to run the numbers on your specific property, not as estimate, not a generic CMA, but a risk-adjusted pricing strategy for your exact situation right here in Center County, reach out. We're going to model conservative, competitive, and aggressive scenarios so that you can see the trade-offs before you ever hit the market. Because the goal isn't just to sell, it's to sell with confidence. I'm Jared Ernico with eXp Realty, Relationships, Reassurance.